Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited for today's video because it's going to be a tour of my dried flower Christmas tree. We're going to be creating some Christmas ornaments with garden material, and we're also going to be creating an amaryllis container that has 2 successions of blooms. And I love to create amaryllis arrangements with things that are already blooming so that you have kind of a nice display right from the start, especially if you're using a big pot and putting in lots of amaryllis bulbs. It can look a little bare at the beginning, but if you fill in with some houseplants and some beautiful blooming houseplants, you get a really nice display to start out with, and then you can just kind of swap them in and out as you please until your amaryllis bloom. So I'm out here collecting some willow branches for that. I need some milkweed pods for the ornaments, and then we'll head inside and get started. We'll grab a little bit of astilbe while we're out here too. And isn't astilbe a wonderful dried flower? This was pink and now it's this beautiful brown color. So the dried flower Christmas tree this year is kind of browns, golds, greens, and also a deep red maroon. And this year I've made different ornaments with dried flowers. I've made a garland out of hydrangeas. So instead of sticking dried flower picks into the tree, just all throughout the tree from top to bottom, I have a little more variation. And what I was going for was more of the feel of a decorated Christmas tree, like you would see with Christmas balls made of plastic and glass, but just using all natural and all dried flower elements. And also I really wanted to create flowers out of other flowers. You know how they do those things on cooking shows where it's a cake, but it looks like a hamburger? I kind of wanted to do that with the dried flower Christmas tree. Now here's some ornaments that didn't make the cut. I was trying to make cardinals out of celosia and straw flower, but I feel like I ended up with scary robot chicken instead. So I think I'll just leave him on the drying rack. I also made these wreaths out of gomphrena and also some salvia and straw flower. I really liked them, but the color just didn't quite match with the other things on the tree. But before I go ahead and show you the tree in its entirety, let's go ahead and finish up the ornaments, and let's start off by making that amaryllis container garden together. So let me show you all the supplies before we get started. I think in the center of this pot, which I got this pot, I think 50% off at Home Depot. It's only $14.99, maybe a week or two ago. In the center of that pot, I want to put 3 exotic star amaryllis. I'll put a picture on the screen for you, but this is a gorgeous white amaryllis with red stripes and kind of a bright green, candy green apple center. Then I thought we'd surround the pot with peperomia. This is peperomia frost. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? It really says Christmas, doesn't it? And then also from my girlfriend's nursery, I picked up these beautiful poinsettias. So when it comes to Christmas flowers, do you prefer poinsettias or do you prefer amaryllis? Now, you know, my heart is with the amaryllis forever, but I do have a special place in my heart for poinsettias too. These 1950s built-ins that we have here, we kept on purpose. First of all, I love the 1950s and the early 1960s. I feel like I was kind of born into the wrong era. But also, my grandma had built-ins at her house. She had one really huge built-in as you would walk up her stairs that she would grow pothos in during the regular growing season. And then for Christmas, she would fill them with fresh poinsettias. So we're gonna do that as well somewhere here during the holiday season. But I guess I like both flowers, but I could say I can't live without amaryllis, but combining them both together in this arrangement will be really beautiful. So let's start with our 3 amaryllis in the center. If you have an amaryllis with a lot of roots like this and you want to keep all the roots intact, sometimes it's helpful to build a little mound, just like you would with an iris rhizome, and then kind of position your bulb on top of the mound and fill in with soil. I'm just removing a little of the soil from the top of these poinsettias. And friends, I'm sorry if you say poinsettia rather than poinsettia. I always said poinsettia growing up. If you want to do something like this and change out the display, you can also just sink the pots into your design rather than planting them. That works really well too. Doesn't that look beautiful already? Let's try to sneak these peperomias in now. I did have to remove a lot of soil from these as well, but oh, isn't that beautiful? I love the differing texture here with the succulent, thick nature of the leaves of the peperomia and the really gentle, more papery bracts of the poinsettia. It's interesting because my girlfriend has these peperomia planted up in kind of a cocoa coir medium rather than a standard potting mix. So I wonder if that's what they prefer. I guess so, she would know best. So I just put one more in the back now. I noticed some comments about how I used my table as a potting bench and my kitchen sink as a place to water plants. And yes, that is how things go around here. Use what you have, right? And speaking of working with what you have, let's go ahead and use this iced tea pitcher as our watering can and water everything in. And I want to keep this design fairly low because it's going to be in the middle of two chairs in my living room, but I think I will go ahead and put some branches in the center. I feel like it needs something right here, but I don't want to stuff another poinsettia in there because I do want to give the amaryllis room to grow. And my preference is to always just sink the pots into the container rather than to plant them like we did today. I wasn't really able to plant them because the root balls were a little bit too big and I wouldn't have been able to fit everything in. But when you sink pots in rather than plant them, you can really control the water a lot better. And then you can use whatever plant your heart desires. I think this year what I'm gonna do, I have a few amaryllis bulbs left, some new ones that are pink. And I think I'm gonna pot those up into kind of a mid-sized container with a single moth orchid, an amaryllis bulb, and then maybe an asparagus fern right in the front kind of spilling over and some moss and pine cones kind of adorning the whole display. Don't you think that will be lovely? I don't know, I just love amaryllis, and I think when you can kind of spruce up the planter with some other plants right from the start, it just makes it extra special. I wrote an article last year about creative ways to gift amaryllis, and I think especially if you're gifting an amaryllis bulb to someone who maybe has never grown amaryllis before, if you gift them something like this, now those of us that have grown amaryllis and know how beautiful this is going to be in a few weeks' time, we get it, we understand it. But I think when you're gifting an amaryllis bulb, it's really nice to at least put in a few houseplants, do a top dressing, create a gift pot. You know, there's just so many ways to get creative with amaryllis, and I would love to hear how you get creative with your amaryllis. But now let's go ahead and put this in my living room and move on to making some poinsettia Christmas ornaments from milkweed pods. So I think you could go as elaborate or as simple as you wanted with these poinsettias. All they're created from are milkweed seed pods. I used gomphrena for this center just because I had that on hand, but I thought a pine cone would probably also look really nice. And here's another one. This one ended up looking a little bit more like a starfish, so maybe it is better with the 2 rows of petals. Here's one that's kind of in between, but these are really easy to make. Let's just turn on our glue gun and get to work. Okay friends, let's take a closer look at how the dried flower Christmas tree turned out this year. I decided to turn the lights off. I think we might be able to see the dried flowers a little bit better. So I made a garland out of mop head hydrangeas. And isn't that beautiful? It adds a lot of bulk to the Christmas tree, and I think it feels just a little bit more like Christmas rather than a botanical Christmas tree, which I still really love a botanical Christmas tree. I was just going for something a little bit different this year. After I did that, I stuck in those milkweed seed pod ornaments that we made. I think you could probably spray paint those gold or maybe a beautiful cranberry color, and that would look nice. The other ornament that I made from dried flowers are these fans, which I made of celosia, and also I stuck a straw flower right in the center there. I stuck a lot of different alliums into the tree. Here we have the lamb's ear Christmas ornaments that I made a few years back. There's some dried dahlias tucked in. The saponaria is throughout the tree. I also wanted some more bulk in the tree, so I put in some pine cones. And I put in these lotus pods. These beautiful ornaments I did pick up from Longwood Gardens, although I think you could make them for a fraction of the cost. As we travel up the tree, more lotus. Look at this dahlia. Isn't that gorgeous? Some must still be here. And basically, I've just repeated the same ornaments throughout in the hopes of giving us kind of a cohesive look to this whole tree. You know, I think there's always room for improvement, but I'm really happy with this tree this year. And also, since our main Christmas tree goes in this room and it's green and white, I was really happy to kind of save the pinks and the purples for some other project. And then for the topper, I did saponaria, nigella, and more celosia. And I do have a major confession. I set up a second dried flower Christmas tree in the dining room, and I did it all in pinks and purples, but I just really wasn't happy with it at the end of the day, so I decided to take it down, and I have a new plan for all of those dried dahlias. I'm going to make miniature Christmas trees out of them solely with dried dahlias, kind of like how you get those small Christmas trees in the store made of maybe something sparkly or pine cones. I'm gonna make them out of dried dahlias, and I think that'll be beautiful. And I'll just tuck them maybe in my kitchen instead of kind of putting a lot of pink and purple in my dining room. Well friends, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed seeing the dried flower Christmas tree come together for 2022. I started this tradition probably back in 2010 was the first one I ever made. It was the year our daughter was born, and I put a lot of dried hydrangeas into our big main tree. I think it was partly because I was just so tired as, you know, an early mom that I didn't really have time or energy to go into the basement and do a lot of decorating. So I just went out into our garden at that house, picked a lot of hydrangeas, threw them on the tree and called it a day. And I was just sitting back and I thought, you know, this is really beautiful, and it really sparks a lot of joy and creativity in my heart. And when we moved here to this house and I started selling cut flowers, I had so many cut flowers left over at the end of the season that I started to make these botanical themed Christmas trees. And little did I know that this is something that my grandma did back in the day, and I shared that with you in last year's video. But I hope you enjoyed seeing the tree come together. I'm really, really happy that we decided to make some ornaments with dried flowers this year. I think that really adds something special to the tree and also brings in a little more bulk. And I think the tree really needed that. So I want to wish you all a wonderful day and a very Merry Christmas season. Bye.